Welcome to the Mom and podcast. We're your hosts, Suzanne Kearns
and Missy Stevens. We want to help you through everything that happens in the ellipses, from your professional life to your emotional health.
You're a mom and so much more. Let's figure out what comes next together. Welcome to the Mom and podcast. I'm Suzanne Kearns, mom and writer, LGBTQ and sex ed advocate. And today, realizing that the Cap 10K is 2 weeks away and I have not run since the half marathon 2 months ago. Oh. So I know what I'm doing this afternoon.
Yeah, maybe going for a little run. And I'm Missy Stevens, mom and writer, foster child advocate. And this week I am happily suffering for my hobby. I am sneezing so much. There's a lot of dirt under my fingernails, but it's the best. I've been in the yard for days and I love it.
What are you planting?
All the things. Like I planted some herbs and I planted some, like a little tiny butterfly garden, and then all my just pots. And then I put in some landscaping shrubs to replace some things that we lost because everything freezes every year.
It's Texas.
Trying to find some hardy things that can handle 110 and -10. It's tricky.
I know. That makes us hardy, I guess.
I guess so.
And today we are so excited to be chatting with Christine Winston. Christine Winston is the acting executive director of Path Forward, a nonprofit organization helping people return to their careers after time spent caregiving. I mean, could there be anything more perfect for us, Missy?
It's like our whole thing.
I know. In the 7 years since Path Forward's founding, the organization has worked with tens of thousands of returners and helped more than 100 employers implement and expand successful return to work programs that create opportunities for traditionally overlooked talent. Here's two of the traditionally overlooked talent right here. Having taken a career break to raise her own children, Christine is driven to help others re-engage with their careers and find success and fulfillment both at work and at home. She lives in Connecticut with her husband and 2 sons. And I swear our paths have crossed somewhere. Looking at your LinkedIn compared to my AOL and all the people that we know from, where did I used to work? Avenue A, Razorfish days. I'm sure that somewhere we have seen each other before, but I'm very happy to see you today. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
We are too, and we're going to dive right in. We learned a little bit about you in your bio. Can you share Christine 101, talk a little bit about where your career started and how you ended up here, kind of your pivots along the way?
Yeah, believe me, none of what happened was in my plan when I graduated from college. That may be partly because I didn't have much of a plan in that moment. I started in a very generic kind of post-college job in commercial banking at Chemical Bank, which then became JP Morgan Chase. And, a few years in, I got a call from a friend of mine who was working at this company called MoviePhone. You guys may remember this, but not everybody listening might remember this. But there was a time before you could get your movie times on the internet where you had to look them up in the newspaper, or you had to call this service 777 Film, and the guy would pick up and say, "Hello and welcome to MoviePhone," and you'd use your touch tone phone to figure out where you were going to the movies. Yes. And they were just thinking, this was mid 90s, we're just thinking about bringing the service online, and he was looking for somebody to help them start their website. And I thought, well, that sounds a lot more exciting than what I'm doing right now. So I jumped over to MoviePhone. It was a small organization, like 30 people, and we grew pretty quickly, and 3 years later we're acquired by AOL. Yes. During their buying frenzy and the .com frenzy. And at that point, I was the head of marketing for MoviePhone, doing all of our consumer marketing and the trailers that used to play in movie theaters. So I was able to sort of move up pretty quickly and get a lot of new skills and learn things that I hadn't learned before. And I carried that with me into AOL because I came into AOL at a time that, and you'll remember this, Suzanne, was pretty chaotic for that organization.
Oh, yes.
Was there through the merger with Time Warner, and it felt like the company reorganized every 6 months. I was there for 9 years, and I had more than 9 bosses. And but what was great about it, and one of the things that I kind of discovered early on and then kept leaning into, was that every one of these organizational changes presented me with some really great opportunities. Right. So I walked in doing, communications and marketing, and I walked out 9 years later as a VP of finance. So I kept looking for, every time there was a reorganization, what can I learn? What can I
Mhm.
do that's new? What would be a new challenge for me? Who have I met in the organization that has a really cool job? And so, I worked in marketing, I worked in the corporate communications group, I worked in programming strategy, and then I ended up working in finance, kind of rolling up all of that into sort of more strategic planning work. And so that was a really great time for me. I had gotten married a couple of years after the acquisition, and my husband was starting a new career. He had decided he wanted to do something he was passionate about. He went back and got a degree in environmental management on top of his MBA,
Oh, wow.
and was making a career in sustainability and helping companies, be more sustainable and hopefully regenerative in their practices. And we didn't really know where that was going to go. So I was the primary breadwinner. I was a primary breadwinner when our first son was born. And then he wrote a book that really took off right around the same time. In fact, it hit the warehouse the day our second son was born.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Okay, plug it. What's the
And
title? What's the
Yeah,
title?
what is it?
it's called Green to Gold.
Oh.
And it is one of the best-selling environmental business books out there. And he started traveling all the time, giving speeches, doing consulting work, and our life became kind of unsustainable as a result
Mhm.
of that. And I decided to take a break from my career. My kids at the time were 4 and 1. Seemed like as good a time as any
Yeah.
to spend some time with them. And I thought I'd be out of the workforce for a couple of years. And
Yes, too.
Uh-huh.
yeah. And as you guys know, that couple of years turned into 5, 7, 9 before you know it.
Yeah.
And that's actually a story that I hear all the time from returners in my current line of work is that, you make a plan and then, fate laughs. And I really started thinking about getting back to work about 5 years in when they were both in school for most of the day, but I really didn't know where to begin. And I was very fortunate to get connected with the woman who was the founding executive director of Path Forward, Tammy Foreman, 7 years ago next week.
Wow.
Was when things really turned around for me. She was just getting started with Path Forward, was looking for her first staff member. And I went in to talk to her about helping her get this organization off the ground. And it was a great fit because I had had this crazy, varied set of experiences that put me in a
Yeah.
really great place to help a tiny team of 2 for quite some time
Mhm.
get something new started. And it was also the perfect marriage of what I wanted for this next stage of my career, right? I had done
Mhm.
all kinds of different work, but I hadn't done any purpose-driven work, and I
Mm.
hadn't done work that was really personally like a personal passion of mine.
Yeah.
And I always say there's some poetry and some irony in the fact that I went back to work in creating an organization that helps other people get back to work.
I think it's the
Um,
most beautiful thing
I
possible.
just love it.
Yeah.
So that is my story and
And
how I got where I am today.
Oh,
we couldn't
and
love it more.
yeah, we both needed you to have done it about 7 years prior to when y'all started. We did. We're going on about
Well, we need it now too. So we're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
But no, that's so much what the whole podcast is about. We're trying to help women get more strategic, even from that first day that they decide to take a step back and pause for a while to figure out what they should be doing during that time. Obviously, spending time with the kids, but they nap, they do other things, they go on play dates,
Do.
and what can you do to really position yourself well for when you do decide to go back in the workforce? So it isn't so startling like that. Like it's very
Yes.
deer in the headlights when you start thinking about it for real after such a long time. So we are 2 of your customer base as far as,
Yeah,
and so many of our listeners are too. So,
absolutely.
okay. So if you're talking to some stay-at-home moms, whether they've been out 5, 10, 15 years, they come to the Path Forward website and then what happens? What do they do?
So the Path Forward website offers a lot of different things for people at different stages in their journey back to work, right? I think there's that moment when you tell yourself, I should probably get back to work at some point. Right?
Or like a moment every 6 months or so for
Yeah,
15 years.
mine
Yeah,
was in
exactly.
Yeah.
2012.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, there's a moment where you want to start taking concrete steps and you have to, God forbid, refresh your resume, find your resume. Mine was on a floppy disk.
Oh no.
So that presented its whole set of different challenges, right?
For our younger listeners, we are blowing their minds. Like, we've
Yeah.
talked about movie phone and floppy disks. Like, some of them are going, what?
Millennials, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And I think there's also that moment where you get that all together and you realize that if you apply to jobs, you're going to need to be ready to interview, right?
Mhm.
And so the people that are coming to our site are everywhere from I've just realized I should probably get back to work to I've been applying like crazy and I'm not hearing back, or I'm hearing a whole lot of no.
No.
And we kind of want to serve everybody where they're at. We have a lot of content around helping you get back to work, both in sort of however you choose to consume your content, right? We have a lot of written resources and some downloadables, but we also do a lot of live events because I think that those are really powerful, both in terms of letting people hear from us and from other experts about how they can position themselves after a career break. How do you write a resume? How do you leverage LinkedIn as a good networking tool, right? How do you prepare for different types of interview scenarios? But we also want them to hear from returners and people who are through this experience and on the other side, and help them to get inspired. And I think that the events serve that function a lot more personally for people, because not only are they hearing from experts, but they're hearing from people who have done what they're trying to do, but they're also there in a Zoom room, if you will, with a lot of other people who are in the same situation that they're in. And I think job searching is a fundamentally lonely activity, and bringing people together who are all in the same boat and can interact in a chat and, feel like they're not alone. And we get that feedback all the time after these events. It was so helpful to understand that, like, I am not on a lonely journey, even though it may feel that way. And then the last thing that we provide, and I think this is kind of the most important, is job opportunities. We're working with companies to get them to create what are called return to work or returnship programs. And the crux of these programs is that an employer sets aside specific jobs and headcount specifically for people with career gaps who are returning to the workforce. So when you apply to those jobs, the pool of other applicants is all people with career breaks. There aren't people there who are in workforce today in that same pool. And that really levels the playing field and allows each returner to be treated on the basis and evaluated on the basis of their own skills and experiences, and not based on when they acquired those or last used them.
Some of the things you've said, I think, for me, when I'm considering this, are a real challenge and a real struggle. Things like, I don't know how to do a resume anymore. I don't really have confidence in my skills anymore. What are some of the most common challenges y'all work with that you hear coming from returners? And what, I guess,
How do you
do
fix this?
you provide the fixes, or do you have the tools? What are they doing? Instead of just me sitting here whining, like, I just don't feel confident. Now what?
Well, you really hit the nail on the head there. I think the biggest issue that most returners are facing is confidence. Regardless of how successful they were in their past career, that imposter syndrome, that sense of self-doubt. And part of it is because today's landscape of the workforce or the interviewing process, or, it seems like this black box and it seems really foreign. And so it's really important, I think, to help returners understand what to expect in that environment. And we actually do a lot of events too with employers who are hiring returners, come in and talk about, like, what are you looking for? What does your interview process look like? Right. So that they can kind of put themselves in that situation. But it really is that confidence piece. And just because you haven't done a specific job in the last 5, 10, God forbid, longer years, doesn't mean that you forgot everything that you know. You may, like I had, have forgotten exactly what the metrics were of that project that you worked
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
But you still remember the skills that got you through that. And I think that
Absolutely.
reminding people what they have to offer is super important. And we have some content on our site. We also did an event entirely around confidence at the beginning of last year,
Mhm.
but tools to just kind of write down and remember for yourself when you felt super successful in your career.
Mm.
What was it that you were doing? What skills were you using when you did that?
Mhm.
And reminding yourself of, who you were in that professional capacity is really, really important. And that's the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah, those ideas of transferable skills, I think, is always such a really powerful thing. And then, do you encourage people to do other? I'm thinking like the Enneagram test, or was it the Myers Briggs or Strengths Finder, trying to figure out. Especially for me, I feel I've had this big extensive break, but even probably a year into my break, I knew that I didn't want to go back to what I was doing
Mhm.
before. So just this exploration of possibility. Do you work on that with them, or do you have any recommendation for resources for people who are looking for that?
So we don't particularly, not because I don't think those things can be valuable for some people,
Hmm.
but because I think that they are, it's very much an exploration and a pathfinding thing. And we're not in
Mhm.
the coaching business or the individual coaching business
Right.
in that sense.
Got it.
But I think there are a lot of great coaches out there that can work with people kind of on those types of strategy and visioning for where they want to be next. I think we focus a lot more on the tactical pieces of this
Hmm.
for people who want to figure out how to get started.
Perfect. That's
Right.
such a good, important distinction. And we just shared in our group and on our page yesterday, which now,
Mhm.
by the time this airs, is going to be a month ago. But
Yeah.
um, and that's why we wanted to share it already, is a link to the resume workshop that y'all are doing,
Oh,
because
great.
we're like, oh no, what if it doesn't air until then? But it looks like for sessions like that, there's this little receptacle of all the past webinars that you've done based on all these different categories that you can still have access to even though they may not be live. So resume building is one of those big ones. I
Absolutely.
I just faced that, and oh.
Yeah. How to treat your gap on your resume is always the
Mhm.
biggest, but the resume just in and of itself, like the level of
They're very different than they used to be.
the yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then we have the extra complicating factor of LinkedIn, which
Mm.
is also your resume, sort of, but you can only
Mhm.
have one LinkedIn profile. Whereas, most job
Correct.
seekers today will customize their resume a little bit based on the jobs that they're applying to.
Yes.
But
Right.
recruiters also have access to your LinkedIn profile, so those things have to agree, right? So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about in terms of,
Uh-huh.
how do you think about this new online resume that we all have on
Yes.
LinkedIn relative to the paper resume that
Oh, my
you're
mind just went.
you're submitting?
I
Yeah.
know it is so tricky because the roles that I look at, and this is my most dangerous thing, and I preach it all the time not to do this. Like, just because you can do a job does not mean that you should do that job. And so I'm very
I get
dangerous
really
looking at.
sucked in by the can-dos.
So I'm very sucked in by, the client service things, the interactive marketing or
Mhm.
advertising things, which are things that I don't want to be doing, but I was like, well, I could do it and it pays a lot more than these other things that I actually want to do. But yeah, so I find my resume is not just like little tweaks of tailoring. It's like the stuff at the bottom goes to the top for some roles and the stuff at the top goes to the bottom. So my senior account director stuff may be, just a bullet point at the things where I'm looking at, community advocacy and grassroots building type of things. So then when you do get to the LinkedIn, it's like, how do you even decide what goes on top?
Uh-huh.
Um, do you
Well,
just
some of
change it
it
every few months?
Yeah.
some of it is dictated for you by LinkedIn, right? The experience part of a LinkedIn profile is chronological, right? You
Hmm.
can't play with that. And that's fine. And I think works when you're customizing a resume because it'll make sense to somebody looking at the resume that you've moved
Right.
something up that's more relevant to the job. I think it's
Yeah.
just that question of what do you put at the top? How do you summarize yourself, what you're looking for, what you excel at in a way that's broad enough to cover off any version of your resume that you're then sending out as part of your
Right.
job search. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I feel like I need to spend a lot of time with my LinkedIn profile.
I know. I know. Well, I sent you the link to sign up for that
Yeah.
resume session.
Yes, you did.
So I
You
expect
need
to
to do
see
it.
you showing up
Yeah,
there.
I
Yeah.
hope that you'll join it. And for anybody listening, that you'll watch it. It'll be available on our site afterwards because we not only have somebody who's an expert and has a great LinkedIn learning course on resumes, and we'll touch on this aspect of the LinkedIn stuff as well, but we have a couple of alumni who have gone through this situation who are going to be talking as well, including one who came back to work as a recruiter, had not been a recruiter before, because that's the kind of job that lots of different jobs can feed into. Who's going to be talking about the resume, both from the standpoint of the returner, but from the employer as well. And I think that's a super important perspective to
Ooh,
give to returners.
interesting.
Yeah, and it brings up something that I was wondering about. A lot of the places we look at that are helping returners, they're really focused. Like we're looking at people who did marketing and getting them back into marketing or finance. Do you focus on a particular field or are your returnships across the board?
No, we don't focus on a particular field. They are in all different kinds of functions: finance, accounting, marketing, product management, software engineering. I mean, we've seen the whole gamut. I do think that, the most in-demand jobs also tend to have the most returnship opportunities, right? So
Right.
we've seen a lot in technology, particularly because that's an area where employers want more women.
Mm,
And returners are predominantly women, not entirely women though.
right.
The ratio, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the ratio of people who are out of the workforce for caregiving reasons is 12 to 1 women.
Yeah.
So naturally,
Makes
this is a
sense.
pool that is largely female.
Now, okay, I hadn't been thinking about this before, but now I'm thinking about it because it seems like all the headlines the past couple of weeks have been of Disney's laying off 8,000, Google, Amazon. I mean, it's not just, 500 people are cut. It's like thousands, tens
Lots
of
of people. Yeah.
thousands of people are being laid off. So, which can be really intimidating for someone like me who literally, I feel like every time I decide I'm going to start putting my toe back in the water, the economy just goes kaplooey. So sorry about that, y'all. Hopefully it's not related. I'll stop looking. So does that mean it's a bad time? Like, is this a time to put stuff on hold, or is it okay? They may not be hiring right now, but now is the perfect time to start getting up and running with that resume and your LinkedIn, even though you may not be getting hired immediately.
So, first of all, yes, there are a lot of really high profile layoffs happening at big companies, but unemployment is still relatively low.
Hmm.
At the moment, it's still a job seekers market. I think that
Interesting.
pendulum may swing back to where, employers are in the driver's seat a little bit more, but a lot of companies are still hiring, but in different sectors, right? If you're looking
Mm,
for a job at a tech company, now might be a tough time.
Hmm.
But if you're an accountant and you're looking for a job, things are looking good for you. Right? So it depends on your industry and your skill and where you
right.
want to be working, what kind of industry you want to be working in. So I think that particularly at times where you're seeing layoffs, I think it's important as a job seeker, regardless, I mean, returners for sure, but any job seeker to just be open to other places where you could apply your skills
Hmm.
that are, continuing to hire and continuing to thrive. And to the second piece of your question about is now a good time to be getting my resume together? There's never a better time than today to start getting your resume together. It's going to take you a while. It's
Missy.
Yeah.
going to take you a while to get back into the flow
Yep.
of,
Yep.
get a resume that you love, start
Hmm.
researching jobs, start networking to find out what's out there and getting some opinions from people you used to work with about where they think your skills could fit in today's workforce, right?
Hmm.
Those are all things that take time. So waiting until it's the perfect moment when everybody's hiring again is actually too late. You're already behind the 8 ball.
Hmm.
Now is the time to be doing that. So I would really encourage people not to take these signs as, not to let that be your reason for extending
Right.
your break.
That makes a lot of sense. And so I don't want me to spend the whole episode on resumes, but one of my friends gave me the greatest gift of offering
Yeah.
to pay someone to do my resume. One of her friends who is a professional at this, which again, I have said on the podcast before, the gift was her just reminded me that I'm worth investing in. So I did not have her pay for it, but I did pay that person to do it. And I was shocked how different resumes are now because there's so much scanning, especially for big companies where the first set of eyes are digital, that are going
Hmm.
through your resume. So do you think the way that the landscape is now that it makes sense to have a professional get you going at least for that first one and then you can tweak it from there? Or are there some tips and tricks that you can do to, I don't know, outsmart the internet right now? Or whatever the what is it? The not I
The ATS system,
the
the
eight
Uh-huh.
applicant tracking system,
oh
or as
boy.
we refer to it, the
Mhm.
dreaded ATS.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there are still human beings looking at most resumes, and that's what we hear pretty consistently from the
Okay.
employers that we work with. I think that they may use some technology, particularly at bigger companies that do a lot of hiring and with really high
Right.
volume jobs, but for the most part, I think you can expect that you're going to have a human being looking at your resume at some point. Whether or not it is worth it to have someone come in, have a professional come in and look at your resume depends on a couple of factors, right? How confident are you in the work that you've done for yourself? And do you have the means to hire somebody, right?
Mhm.
And, our premise as a nonprofit organization is that people might not necessarily have those means and they need
Yeah.
free resources for that. And that's why we do programming and the events like the one we were just talking about, because there are people who need that kind of help who might not be able to engage a professional to do it. I've also had returners tell me I engaged a professional and I got it back and I was really disappointed. I didn't feel like it,
Mm,
it didn't feel like me.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I ended up going back and reworking it myself. And yeah, I kept a couple of elements of that,
right.
but I went largely back to kind of where I was before.
Mhm.
So I think it kind of depends how hard a time you are having
Mhm.
getting yourself to 80% of the way there. But I
Right.
think something that you said up top, and this is something that I think is really important for people to know, is that you shouldn't sweat your resume too much. Because in the end, and the ladders did this really interesting eye scan study with recruiters on a resume, where they used like an eye scanner to see like how long they spent on each piece of the resume.
Uh-huh.
And most of the time spent was on the professional summary and the company and title of the most recent job and the next job down, and not anywhere
Interesting.
else, not the specific bullet points. So I think if you're going to get one piece of your resume right, it's that professional summary at the top where you talk about yourself and your skills and what you're looking for.
Okay. Good to
Right.
know.
It is good to know. I'm
Okay. We
signing up for the
I know.
webinar workshop.
I told you I sent that link yesterday. And I'm
Yeah.
so I love, love, love to hear the fact that some of these return or all or most of these returnship programs actually have their own little bucket for returners.
Yes.
Because, yeah, we don't have a lot of visibility into what that looks like on the company's side. And I feel like COVID has done a lot to remove the stigma of career breaks. But are you seeing that from the companies that you work with as well, or even before COVID, were they welcoming to have these moms and see the value of what we bring to the workforce?
Well, the companies that we work with are the ones who have actually signed on with us and who have understood what we have sold them, if you will,
Mhm.
right? Which is we are going into companies to talk to them about the tremendous size of this talent pool, right? At any
Mhm.
given time in the US, there are 10 or 11 million women out of the workforce for caregiving reasons. And that's just the women of prime working age, which they define as 25 to 54, right? So
Mhm.
huge pool of talent sitting on the sidelines. And they're immensely talented. And I am sure this applies to the two of you and to lots of people who are going to be listening to this. Our audience on average has 11 years of prior professional experience,
Mhm.
right? These are people with real skills that we could be mobilizing in service of our companies and our economy. And so when we're going to talk to employers, we're talking to them about the size and the caliber of this audience and about gender diversity in the workplace, right?
Yeah.
Women are not participating in the workforce in the same numbers that men are, and that lack of participation is causing all kinds of other issues, right? We don't have women in leadership in the numbers that we'd like to
Mhm.
see. We have a giant gender pay gap. And a lot of that is related to participation issues because women are
Mhm.
off-ramping from the workforce and they
Mhm.
don't have ways to on-ramp back in. So, sorry, that was a long-winded way of saying once an employer has decided to work with us, it's because they've already bought in and we've already sort of made them see the light, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they are carving out specific positions at their company for these returners. And the results of these programs have been really, really great with, 80% of people going through these programs, which are, temp to perm roles, getting that permanent role at the end. And they become loyal employees because,
Mhm.
when somebody gives you a chance when others didn't, that creates a different kind of employee loyalty. So the
Yep.
retention
Yeah.
numbers for returners at these companies, a couple years out are way above the general retention numbers a lot of these companies, which is what kind of keeps them running these programs year in and year out to welcome more women back into their workforce.
I got
Um,
butterflies. That's my I always get butterflies at some point, but the idea that these companies already see the value, because we say all the time, like, we didn't get dumber in this time. If anything, we got smarter, and
Mhm.
our brains still work. And yes, we use them for something different than being in a traditional working role for a lot of years. But women like us and our listeners have so much to offer. And I love that you're doing what you're doing so that there's somebody in the hiring role who can say, yes, we also agree that you have a lot to offer.
Mhm.
I love that you just said that, Missy. We always say it to the team at Path Forward, like they didn't get hit by a dumb stick. They just took a break.
Right. Right. I mean, I have used my brain so much since I left my
Yes.
last full-time job.
Well, and I
Um,
also think that the unpaid work that so many of these folks are doing is creating a whole different set of skills
Oh, yeah.
yes.
around communication and
Mhm.
teamwork. And quite frankly, the caregiving work is often not the only work that returners have been engaged in. They're
Mhm.
doing part-time work, they're doing volunteering in their communities,
Mhm.
and other types of work that both is keeping their existing skills fresh and developing new ones.
Yep.
Yes.
Uh, I think
Yeah.
that really shows up for the employers that are willing to try to start these programs. And, that's not to say that a company signs on with us and every single hiring manager and recruiter who works with us as part of that program is 100% bought in. There's always a
Right.
little more work to do.
Mhm.
But as I said, the results generally speak for themselves. And we have a lot of converts out there in our employer base, if you will.
It's so exciting.
I know. It's
So
wonderful.
exciting. One of the other things that we really try to do for our listeners and for ourselves is really encourage us to do things that are taking steps towards this, even when we're not ready to go back to work. So maybe you just had a baby or your parent needs care right now and just happened, you just stepped out of the workforce and you're maybe 3, 5, 7 years away from going back. What can you be doing right now that prepares you for this time when you're ready to jump into something like Path Forward and really hit the floor running?
Well, I always start with the thing I wish I had done more of, right? I've walked this path, and the
Uh-huh.
the biggest mistake I think I made was that when I left the workforce, I quit cold turkey. And by that, I mean I didn't reach out to my former colleagues, I didn't stay in touch with people, and that was a huge mistake because it
Mhm.
made it really awkward for me to reach out later when I wanted to start networking.
Mhm.
I kind of left that part of my life behind and moved on. And I think it's really important if you're somebody who has just left the workforce or you're just, a year or two into your break to stay in touch with your former colleagues. You don't know where they're going to land. They will be
Mhm.
your best assets in terms of helping you figure out the landscape when you want to go back. So maintain those relationships, the ones you liked, but maintain those relationships because you will want that network when you
Yes.
do decide to go back, regardless of how long that might be. Um,
That's so much easier now than it was, say, when I quit cold turkey and walked away.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't a simple way. There wasn't a LinkedIn, there wasn't a Facebook. Now you really can stay in touch pretty easily. There's not much excuse to
Oh,
not.
yeah.
yes. I was really grateful when I went to come back that LinkedIn had really just kind of gotten off the ground the year before or something like that before I left the workforce. And so I had a LinkedIn profile and I was connected on LinkedIn to, 100 or so folks.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't starting from scratch and
Right.
was able to get in there. But so I do think that made it easier for me and will only make it more easy for people who have those tools,
Mm-hmm.
active and built up when they leave the workforce. The other thing that I would say is that if you work in a career that allows some project based work, to keep that going, even if it's, 5 hours a week or 5 hours a month, whatever it is. And, I
Mhm.
have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
friends who practice law. That's a great career for keeping some, project-based work going. And there are others like that as well. And if that's not something that's available to you, do the things that most people do, right? Get involved in a local organization, serve on
Mm-hmm.
a board, serve on your school PTA, which lets you be closer to your kids in their school.
Mhm.
Because all of those things build up a new network for you in your community, which
Mm-hmm.
will also help you when you're looking to get back,
Yes.
but also give you all those skills I was just talking about that are like those softer skills around, you know, if you can coerce a group of moms in the PTA to get a project done through influence without
You could
authority,
negotiate our way
you
out
could do
of
it.
like
Yeah. If you can negotiate putting on shoes with a toddler, you're all set. Like you got those skills going. Um,
you are a
yeah,
professional conflict negotiator. Yes.
Oh
totally.
my goodness. Oh, well, I love everything about this except for that it did not exist in 2005. But that is but that's not your fault.
No.
So no, I just think it's so exciting the more and more opportunities that there are for moms to just use all parts of their brain, all parts of their skills and not be that quote unquote just a mom while they're at home with
Right.
their kiddos. So
Right.
want to make sure that all of our listeners can find you, find
Mm-hmm.
Path Forward. So, can you share the best way to get in touch? Well, I don't want anybody just reaching out and sending you emails, but best way to learn more about Path Forward and get
Yeah.
started there.
Absolutely. The very best way is to go to our website. It's pathforward.org. And when you get there, there's a specific section for returners that'll lay out for you what resources are available for you, let you sign up to get our newsletter. We're building a bunch of new things that are coming out this spring, including a community platform that I think will be super helpful for
Yeah.
returners to not feel alone on your journey and to feel supported on your journey. So we hope folks will join that as well. And you can also always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I share your journey, and I'm always happy to connect.
Wonderful. And now, is there there's no charge or anything? You're a nonprofit,
No,
there's no charge for anything.
no, we are a nonprofit organization, and everything that we do for returners is free. All of our events, all of our resources, and we really want to help kind of turn the tables and put returners in a place where they can influence the outcomes.
Wonderful.
Love it.
Love that part too.
Love
All
it.
right. So we're going to jump into our Look, Listen, Learns then. And so for anybody who's listening for the first time, our Look, Listen, Learns, the time where we just spend a little time talking about things that we are looking at. So that could be reading, watching on TV, listening to podcast music, or learning about. And we don't like to put our guests in the hot seat. So I'm going to have Missy start out with her Look, Listen, Learns.
Of course, I have kind of a strange one this week. Like, if you've been listening to the show over the last few weeks, you've probably noticed I'm cranky. And I would like to apologize, but also I'm not sorry. Like, just a lot of things are going on in the world. And I realize that every week when I talk about it, I'm like, I'm really mad about this. I'm really fired up about that. But I am really mad and fired up about a lot of things going on, trying to figure out where I fit and where I can help and where I can do more in some of those things I'm mad about. But because of that, I have noticed that like my mental health is not maybe where it should be. I'm a little crankier than I am. I don't always run at that level. And so I am. And so I've just been listening to a lot of music, and I've already talked about it in some of our Look, Listen, Learns. Spotify is my new best friend. I find it so much easier to use than a lot of other music sources where I can just put in what I'm looking for. They now have this AI DJ Mine is fantastic. I love him. And he's a great little robot. And he just finds music, plays some of the stuff that you listen to all the time, finds new music. And so I have not listened to a lot of podcasts or books or anything in the last week. I'm just listening to music, pepping myself up and listening to happy stuff and just kind of trying to get out of this space. Like, it's okay to be mad and it's okay to be angry, but I can't walk around in this like, oh, I'm so frustrated. Like, there's more to life than that. So I'm using my listen time to do that right now. So I don't have anything too interesting to share there, but I do have a funny product that I bought today and I cannot wait to receive. And I'm going to hold it up here, but I will also put it in the show notes. But it's this company called Mo Sews, and she makes these really cheeky sweatshirts that are bird puns. And Suzanne knows, like, I love birds. I also really like raccoons. I have weird animal affectations. I bought one that has 2 geese on it and it says honkers. A lot of them are boob related puns. So I bought it this morning on a whim, and then I looked through her site. She's great. Then I found her socials, and she's really funny on socials. And I would like to, she's a small business. She's just quit her full-time job to do this full time. She's doing these embroidered sweatshirts. She does have some that do not have bird/boob puns on them. Some are just like little bees and butterflies that are cute, but she embroiders all these sweatshirts. So go to mosews.com and buy yourself. There's one that says boobies and has blue-footed boobies on it. I love it.
God, that is a riot.
They're so great. So need a giggle, a little pick-me-up. I mean, I might not wear in public. I might. You don't know. But I'm definitely going to wear it around the house.
You can't be grumpy if you're wearing that sweatshirt.
Right. And neither can like any of the people I live with, I also have 2 sons. I know you have 2 sons. They'll all be mortified.
I was going to say, yeah.
Like, that's kind of a bonus, right?
Traumatizing your son at the same time. Perfect.
So that is me this week. What are you up to, Christine?
So I have been listening to the new Pink album. I just love her. I have always loved her music, but I don't know if either of you caught the documentary film that she made about being on tour with her kids and being a mom and being a rock star.
No.
Okay,
you really should watch it.
And sharing it with our community.
It is amazing. She actually took her children on tour with her. I've seen her in concert, and her energy level is unbelievable.
Like acrobats, and
she literally flies through the air multiple times during the show. And I'm really excited she's going on tour again this summer. But I've been listening to her new album, which is just great. I have always appreciated her sort of, I don't know, being a bit of a rebel against the standard in the music industry. And I think it's been really fun to watch how that's evolved as she's become a mother and how she's integrated her career and life, right? Like, we all struggle with that, is what's the integration between, there's no balance. Like, forget like work-life balance. That's just a misnomer. It's what's the integration that we're creating between those two things? And her documentary about how she did that has been really, really fun to watch. So
I'm checking that out today.
Yeah. And then I've been learning to play pickleball, because isn't everyone?
I am the last person. I've been hearing about it. There's people, our tennis court, you can't play tennis anymore because it's just all pickleball people over there.
It is so fun. It's like a combination of ping pong and tennis. And I've been playing it on the weekends with my friends. And we thought we were getting really good. And then somebody sent around an Instagram post of professional pickleball players. And we realized that we really are not. But it's just a really, really fun activity. Don't mistake it for a workout. It is not a workout.
I've played a couple times,
super,
and
super fun and social. So highly recommend if you are among the holdouts, because it seems like everybody's playing pickleball these days.
I need to do that. That'll be my moms who dare for Suzanne is going to be playing pickleball.
Yeah.
Yeah, all my friends, like for their birthdays and stuff, are getting what is it called, monogrammed pickleball racket cases, and like they're full into it.
Yeah, so I can say this now because by the time this runs, it'll have happened. But I'm hosting a birthday party Friday night at my house for a friend who's really into pickleball. And our gift that we went in was like fancy paddles, fancy case and everything. Like
Yes.
that's her gift.
I read another article that people are just up in arms because it's super loud. Like,
it is.
is it really
is
loud? Yeah, people who live
not.
next door to these tennis
Oh, I
courts are
guess
like trying
so,
to ban
yes.
and outlaw pickleball. So it is that loud.
It's
Yeah, it's like a
really loud
plastic,
because
like
it's like this hollow, it's like a wiffle ball, but
Mhm.
a much harder plastic. So if you
Okay.
think of like the ping pong noise and
Uh-huh.
then amplify it and make it really echoey.
And then have a bunch of middle-aged women like giggling while they do it.
Yes.
I love it. Oh, okay. I need to try. Missy, let's do that before it turns 100 degrees here in Texas.
Yeah, we should. We should have a mom and pickleball meetup.
Mom and pickleball. That's what the dots could be, the little balls. Oh, I'm seeing it now.
Okay, we got to do it. Do it.
Oh, is there anything else you've been listen, learning?
No,
No,
just those two.
we're lucky. We're
Perfect.
lucky if we learn something most weeks. So we're
Some weeks I just choose not to.
yes, I refuse.
There's only so much you can do.
Okay, so I'll jump into mine then. Looking at, although we started a few weeks ago, Mandalorian's back. So very excited. Well, even more than Mandalorian, Grogu's back.
I know, he's so cute.
So cute. And then because it's my only vicarious claim to fame, I just got to say, I've said it before, my friend Dave is the cinematographer, or one of the cinematographers, or I think they call it a director of photography,
Yes,
of photography
I think so.
for Mandalorian. And Missy and I, when we were in LA last year, met up with him for dinner, which I still owe him another dinner for this. He's so sneaky about paying bills. He did the same thing when we were in LA with the kids. I was like,
yeah, he just bought our dinner.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to get him back when he's not paying attention. Like, I'm finally going to get, and he's
What are you talking about? That's the best kind of friend, the one who
I
picks up the
know,
tab.
but I'm like, I haven't seen him for like 30 years. It's like now twice in a row. So one of these days I'm going to, Dave, if you're listening, I'm coming to buy you dinner.
He bought us dinner and told us great stories the whole night.
Oh my gosh. Oh, we learned all the truth about Grogu. And so it was so much fun. And it just makes it extra fun. First of all, because I get some serious street cred with the kids now that they've met him. And it's so fun because at the end of each episode, we're starting to get to tell almost his style. Because, they go back and forth, the different episodes, whoever the director of photography is that episode. And we'll always kind of place bets and be like, I think this was one of Dave's. And sure enough, it is. But then, so I've been looking at that and listening. Speaking of Mandalorian, Smartless had a really great episode a few weeks ago with Jon Favreau, which was just super, super fun. And then the one this week was Keanu Reeves. Oh my gosh. People always talk about just like how this legend of Keanu Reeves and how charming and kind and whatever he is.
It's pretty delightful, right?
This whole interview was just, every word was just, I don't know. You could just feel a really good energy. I hope he doesn't turn out being a real jerk. Like someday someone finds his dark side. I don't know. But I found it very lovely. So especially in an ugly week like this, if you need something to give faith in humanity, listen to Smartless with Keanu Reeves. It was really, really good. And then I learned, really random learn, it's a very specific learn. If you are going to get your 13-year-old a checking account and a debit card, bring every piece of ID that they have ever had and both parents to the bank. Because I was like, surely he's had a savings account there for 13 years. This should be fine. Just add another account. No. Oh my God. I did have to have my husband drive across town to bring me the passport and the birth certificate and what else? He doesn't even have a student ID card. So there's all this other weird stuff. But luckily my husband came because my husband still after many years does not have access to Zoe's bank account because when we did that one, I was only there. And so I'm the only parent who has access. So I have to have this whole different login and password if I want to do anything that has to do with Zoe's account. So yes, plan ahead, make a day of it. If you are ever going to get your teenager set up on their own checking account with a debit card, which I do highly recommend because that certain 13-year-old keeps on losing weird stuff like his headphones. And we're like, well, that's a really great thing for you to be able to buy on Amazon with your new debit card. So highly recommend. But just make sure, unless you want to make your husband interrupt his video game time with his friends to come deliver you paperwork, make sure you bring it with you. So that was my learn.
Yeah. That's a good learn. That is good advice.
It is. All right. Oh
Nice.
my gosh. So excited
Thank
about
you.
Path Forward.
Me
so excited
too.
about all the stuff that you are doing. And I'm really excited about that resume class coming up. So
Me
I'm
too.
looking forward to that.
I look forward to seeing you both there.
Yes, we'll continue to share the link with our listeners to make sure that they hear it in case this episode doesn't go out before then. But again, even if you do miss it live, oh my gosh. I mean, just you scroll on the little page. There's so many different great webinars and sessions that are already available that were pre-recorded. So make sure you take a look at those as well too.
Suzanne, Missy, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. You all are great.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure knowing you. All right.
Yes.
Everybody have a great
wonderful
week.
afternoon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for the Mom and ... podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if you know someone else who could benefit from the episode, please be sure and share it with them. And while we're begging, please subscribe and rate us wherever it is you listen to podcasts. You can find links to all the things we discussed today in our show notes or over at our website, momandpodcast.com, with the A-N-D spelled out. In between shows, find us over at the socials, including our private Mom and Community Facebook group. The links to that group and all of our socials can be found at momandpodcast.com. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you more than you know. Now go out there and make your ellipses count.